Hey everyone, it's the listener question episode of the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. We're starting to make these a little bit more frequent and a little bit more part of our regular rotation. I'm happy to be with you. I'm Anthony Cosenza with the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. My co-host John Sheeran is also here. John, I know you've been experiencing a little bit of troubles. I shouldn't say troubles, annoyances. It sounded like earlier since we last spoke. So I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're getting through the rest of the week, and I'm sure you're looking forward to the weekend, correct?
We call those first world problems, and they can be solved by a drink in my hand in about an hour. So let's go. Well, let's run through these. Let's do it.
Yeah, you are. The drink in your hand portion is something that you are ahead of me on because you are 3 hours ahead. So I got a little bit longer to go on that front, but.
5 o'clock somewhere is not just phrase.
That's right. That's right. I'm very close to adopting that mantra right now. But well, let's get through these questions first. For those who are just joining us, maybe for the first time, or maybe you're new to Cincy Jungle or anything like that, you can leave your questions if you're joining us there in the comment thread at cincyjungle.com. You can leave them in the live YouTube chat and that we have going for this video stream. You can also hit us up via call or text 949-542-6241. Our Twitter line at Bengals OBI is open if you want to try and shoot a question there, and we'll try and get to as many as we can as we go through this show here. But we've already had a couple sent our way. Let's start with an email that we got from Thomas. He writes, first, thank you for the job you do with the site and the podcast. Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate you listening and reading the site. And of course, John, where would this listener question segment be without a question sort of revolving around the Jonah Williams injury? So Thomas writes, the Redskins have a disgruntled starting left tackle in Trent Williams. If the Bengals think they could make some real noise this year, could you see them making a move to get him? Of course, Williams wants a new contract, and with Green and Boyd's extensions needing to get done, things could be tricky. With him being one of the best in the league, he's going to command some serious cash as well. So I don't think there's been much movement on the Trent Williams factor with the Redskins, and they may be in a state of transition themselves, given that their quarterback situation is very fluid at the moment. So obviously Trent Williams, good player, right?
Mm-hmm. There's no doubt that Washington wants, if they're going to roll out Dwayne Haskins in year one, there's no doubt that they want him there. And from what we've heard, it's that, Williams doesn't like how the medical staff handled his injury and just all the other things that go along with being disgruntled with the Washington Redskins organization, which he's not the first person who's dealt with an injury has said these things about him. But I don't see the Bengals doing that at all. Like, it's very rare that they deal picks for players, and if they do so, it's usually a player that is really at the tail end of their career or can be had for a cheaper price. But obviously, even before Williams gets a contract extension, he's still pretty heavily against the cap at the moment. He's getting paid as one of the best left tackles in the league, and deservedly so, because he is one of the best left tackles in the league when he's healthy. Should they do it? I definitely think they should consider it, because even beyond just he's going to want an extension. Like, the Bengals, their problems at offensive tackle aren't solved with just Jonah Williams right now, because Cordy Glenn is not necessarily a long-term solution at left tackle, and Bobby Hart shouldn't be considered any type of short-term or long-term solution at all. So if you have at least a 5-year future with Trent Williams as one of your tackles and Jonah Williams as another one of your tackles, that makes it going from a liability to a complete asset and one of the best tackle duos in the league if Williams becomes the tackle that they want him to. So the obvious issue is what compensation you give up for him and what eventually you pay him to keep him long term, and that's something that definitely would deter the Bengals from doing something like this. For a 1-year rental, I don't see them offering anything more than like a 5th round pick, and I think it's going to take a little bit more than the 5th round pick right now to acquire Trent Williams. Maybe further in the offseason as we get into preseason when they're a little more desperate, maybe that price becomes a little more reasonable, but right now I don't see them doing anything remotely close to that. I think that's definitely for a team that's a lot more aggressive in their nature.
Right. And my thing is this, it's a realistic scenario that is brought up to us by Thomas, but there is a little bit of an element of maybe being a bit of Madden franchise mode with a move like this. But I look, the Bengals have been telling us all offseason that they think that they're close. They think that the coaching changes and increased health and then this new rookie class, they think all of those factors coming in here are going to make this team competitive. A lot of the players in the building currently are saying that they think they're going to make the playoffs this year. If you really think so and you think you're close, why not make a move like this? I mean, you have the cap space, and granted, you may not have the cap space for Boyd, Green, and a Trent Williams if you're going to do Trent Williams long term, but you have the cap space. Your recent draft classes have not been that great, so you haven't been really maximizing your draft capital that you've had, especially at the top of the draft because of injuries, misses, all that kind of stuff. Why not? I mean, if you really do think you're that close, and you really are serious about winning, the Jonah Williams loss is a big blow, and that's your starting left tackle, one of the most important positions on a football team. If you can get another guy that's a starting caliber guy, do it. And they have the capital, they have the resources, they have the cap space to do a lot of things, still get creative and extend a lot of these guys. I don't see why you wouldn't do it, other than the fact that you don't want to spend the money, you don't want to spend the draft capital, and that's usually what it comes down to for the Bengals. Do I see that happening? No. The only way I could see a Trent Williams thing happening in Cincinnati, a trade or anything like that, is if, you know, the Redskins, that relationship between he and the Redskins gets worse and worse, and you know, then it becomes kind of bargain bin time for teams out there, and then the Bengals may come knocking there. But I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I just don't see it happening. I'm sure you agree with that too, John, right?
Just real quick, if it comes down to like keeping all three, or just keeping the receivers, or adding Bengals fans would want Trent Williams for a receiver, but I think I might be in that camp because a healthy Trent Williams is, again, a top 5 left tackle, and he's about to major Green right now, and the cost differences will be about the same depending on, you know, which receiver that you would go. But I think I would probably lean towards adding Trent Williams and taking away one of the receivers than just keeping both receivers. But again, I don't think that's going to happen, and we don't know the long-term impacts of Williams' injury at the moment. So all that situation is very clear. It's very cloudy right now, and the last thing that the Bengals want to do is enter another cloudy injury tackle situation on their hands, because after what happened with Jonah Williams, I think they just want some clarity there.
Yeah, and if we know anything about Mike Brown, he likes to pay those receivers. He's done it a lot in the past.
Yeah.
And you know, he likes those skill position guys, not so much paying. I mean, he's paid tackles in the past very well also, but you know, he likes paying those receivers. Let's move on. Good question, and thanks for the compliment, Thomas. Hit us up again sometime soon. This was an interesting one, and unfortunately it is a little negative. But I think it's kind of a funny one. It's a, oh boy, the life of a Bengal fan type of question. And it was a tweet from Brian Scott, I thought it was pretty funny that Brian Scott's avatar is Michael Scott of The Office. So I don't know if he's trying to say, hey, I'm related to Michael or whatever. And Michael Scott made an appearance on our last episode of the podcast. So hope you enjoyed his little soundbite that he provided us. But name a moment that made you question your Bengal fandom. And then Brian says, for me, it's passing on Steven Jackson, Marvin's return in 2011, losing to TJ Yates. I think that one was 2012, right? The Chargers loss, the fumble. I'm assuming he's saying Jeremy Hill fumble. Marvin's return in 2016 and lowballing Witt. Those are some of the ones there. Your thoughts, or if you have someone or something that sticks out where you go, that one really stuck with me.
He mentioned 2 Marvin returns, and the one for me personally was the one that he didn't mention. 2017, when he was brought back for a 2-year extension after going 7-9. Like, I was just literally on the verge of, like, this team doesn't care. And I've said that a lot in the past, like before then, but at that point I just realized Mike Brown just does not care. He's going to do whatever is easiest for him. He's going to do whatever gets the minimum amount of acceptable profits going into his pocket. A 2-year deal for Marvin Lewis after, at the time, going like 13 and or whatever, like 10 games under 500 in 2 years, going nowhere. The franchise was in a complete state of staleness. Same incompetence problems in both free agency and the draft and on the field were happening all the time. 2-year extension for Marvin Lewis, to me, is just basically saying that they don't care. And I know that 2018 offseason, they put this facade on being more aggressive and everything, but at the end of the day, it basically netted the same results. So going into the 2019 offseason, there were rumblings about, again, Marvin was contemplating quitting and just moving on by himself. I'm like, I just refuse to believe it until I see it based off of 2017. But for like a couple days following the 2-year extension announcement, I was seriously contemplating, like, do I even want to write for Cincy Jungle anymore? Because I can't write for Cincy Jungle if I'm not a Bengals fan. And I was just seriously considering just packing it in, just being like a general fan. But like that was definitely the hardest for me, I think.
Yeah. I've fortunately and unfortunately followed this team a little longer than you, John, just because I'm older. Definitely not wiser, but I'm older. And there are two that really stick out to me. And they stick out for a variety of reasons, not necessarily, they stick out for a variety of reasons. The first one is the Palmer injury in 2005 in the wild card game. Luckily the Bengals had a modicum of success after that, both with Palmer and without. But, there was this big buildup for a couple of years. 2003 they drafted him, but he sat all year, and the Bengals almost made the playoffs that year. 2004 they were kind of competitive. They were pretty competitive. He started most of the year. Then he got hurt at the end of his first season, and then they went 8-8, didn't really do much there. And then, of course, 2005, that's when everybody kind of felt like this was the year. They're going to do it. They're going to go far. I think most people felt that team was the team that was going to potentially go to or win the Super Bowl that year with a full team healthy. And of course, the whole thing, we know the story by now, but first pass, he completes a 66-yard bomb to Chris Henry, and it all just kind of explodes. Chris Henry gets hurt on the play. Carson Palmer gets hurt on the play. Really, his career was never really the same after that. I mean, he still had a couple of good statistical seasons, but never truly the same after that. And then, you kind of try and put things together from there. And then really the 2015 wildcard game. And I say that because the roller coaster of emotions that took place in that game, and in really such a short period of time, and the fact that the Bengals or the football gods or Mike Brown or whoever you want to blame, something with this team knows how to really pull the rug out from under you, and in such a way that is just so painful. And really, I remember the reactions of myself, my brother, and people who were watching that game. And I kind of said, yeah, this is pretty unhealthy. The anger and it's just, and it's something completely out of your control. So those are times where you kind of went, yeah, and in such just a heart-wrenching way. It's not just you lose and you get blown out. It's just these ways where you go, wow, we just, we can't have nice things. And, you kind of, I don't know, you kind of makes you question things. And those are two that really stick out in my mind. There are plenty of others that I'm sure others can point to. But 2005 wild card and 2015, ironically, 10 years later, the 2015, and against the same team, the 2015 wild card game, those are two that really stick out to me as questionable moments of fandom here. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. He's John Sheeran. I'm Anthony Cosenza. We're doing some listener questions here. We've already got a few. You can try and get yours to us in the live YouTube chat that's going on right now with the video feed. We'll be here for about another 10 or 15 minutes, I think. And then we also have a live comment section on cincyjungle.com, so leave them there. You can also call or text us 949-542-6241 if you are so inclined. If you're new to the show, or if you're a regular and can't join us live, you can always get this show on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Spotify, on Google Play. You can, I mentioned subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on the Megaphone platform. We may be switching that platform coming up here. So if and when we do, I will let you know. But for now, keep it to Megaphone if that's your preferred choice. And you can get the program. Also, all of our stuff is on cincyjungle.com, so get that there. We did get a question in the comment thread, John, from Jordan Ritzy 19. It says, I guess I can ask a question for once. We're talking a little bit of Jonah Williams here. I've heard Clint Bowling is done, and after the Jonah Williams injury, Westerman has been the starter at left guard per Bengals.com. How do you feel he will fare? While he's done well in limited snaps, they were so limited, and there's got to be a reason he's been a backup since drafted. In regards to the tackle situation, who do you think the backups there at the moment? If Glenn or Hart get hurt, is it Sutherland, Dugas, Jordan? If you don't mind, since there's a couple of questions in there, I will briefly talk about the Westerman thing, and I'll let you talk about the tackles because you put up a really good post on cincyjungle.com talking about the tackle situation, just kind of for time's sake and everything. But good questions from Jordan. We don't know about Clinton Bowling being done. We've heard some rumblings that I think it was via Joe Goodberry and a source he had saying that they say Clint Bowling is done. Certainly hasn't, been a good omen that he hasn't practiced at all this off season under the new regime. And then the fact that it is a new regime and they've brought in so many new offensive linemen, that's not a great sign for him. But I still maintain that he is one of, if not now, their best offensive lineman when healthy, very versatile, and just a solid offensive lineman. We've talked about Westerman before, so I won't go into too much detail, but I will say this. Westerman has been the rumor is that Westerman has a poor ability to grasp plays, not a good chalkboard player, quote unquote, if you want to use that phrase. And that, my opinion is, there was talk when he was drafted that he was a second or third round talent, and the Bengals got him in the 5th round. My opinion, and I have not heard this specifically, but my opinion is that he probably didn't do well in interviews, pre-draft interviews on the playbook front, on the grasping of plays and concepts. We've heard from sources that basically he has been known to basically miss an assignment in practices about 50% of the time, if not more. And that's why Marvin Lewis got frustrated with him, and he was so far down in the depth chart. But like Jordan says, he plays well when he's out there. Yeah, he's a gamer. Right? I mean, he's kind of one of those guys that when he gets the game snaps, he does okay. He plays well. So, I'm okay with him at left guard, especially given the situation, given who the Bengals have. He's probably a slightly better option than John Jerry at this moment in time. But small sample sizes can trick you. Sometimes small sample sizes tell you nothing, and sometimes they tell you a lot. And you don't know until you get a larger sample size. So he's still a question mark, but I think there is talent there. I think it's more mental than physical. And, at some point you may just want to throw him to the fire and see what you got to see if he is a long-term solution for this team. But that's that on the interior lineman. John, if you want to add to that, please do. But I definitely wanted to have you chime in on the tackle situation, since you wrote a very nice piece on Cincy Jungle about that recently.
I just want to say this real quick about Westerman. Back in 2016, it was Westerman's first offseason. I was at training camp and posted a video just about a practice rep there. And his dad followed me on Twitter. He was my 130th follower. And I just think it's really funny how I haven't seen Westerman's dad on Twitter at all, but I see Alex Redmond's stepdad on Twitter a lot, just defending him. I feel like if Christian Westerman's dad defended him as much as Alex Redmond did, he'd be getting some actual playing time. But that's beside the point. Right. For the tackle situation, I think on Bengals.com it was reported that Trey Hopkins was taking backup reps at right tackle, which is it's interesting because he's played there before in the preseason. So I think he's going to be even more important this year than in years past, where he's more than just a backup on the interior. He might just be the swing tackle. He might just be a backup at all 5 spots, which definitely means that, his importance is definitely valued for his third or fourth offensive line coach he's had now in 4 or 5 years. And the other, they're going to have 3 true tackles, though, because I think Hopkins is still listed as a guard or a center on the website. So that'll probably come down to Justin Evans, the guy that just signed from Arizona. He just has 1 year of experience. Cam Perkins is still with the team. He's technically a 1-year player, but he's been with the team since 2017. And you're right, there's Sutherland and Odugas who have tackle size, but maybe are more best utilized inside. So at the end of the day, you have 10 guys who can best play at guard, but only a couple of guys that can play a tackle. They're going to have a third tackle. I don't know if he's on the roster right now, but if he is, he's probably not a very good backup option at the moment. Mm-hmm. So if I had to place a bet on one, I would go with Perkins just because he's been with the team longer. But I think that there's nothing really that separates him between Evans, and it'll just come down to who does better in camp and preseason.
Yeah, good question there from Jordan, and definitely an area of concern, tackle that is, for the Bengals now that Jonah Williams was hurt. And the Bengals didn't double dip at the position in the draft, and nor did they do much in free agency at the position. So definitely something to monitor there. Let's go to the live YouTube chat.
You looking at this linebacker question? That's what I'm looking at.
Which one?
I'm looking at a question about our third-round pick, Jermaine Pratt, from Dave Lennox.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
All right. So Dave says, with all the pre-draft hype about Devin White and Devin Bush and the real drop-off in talent to the next linebackers, why should we believe in Pratt? That's a good question, because there was that talk early on in the draft process, how it's like a 2-horse race about who's the best linebacker. And really, the hype for Bush really started around just before the combine. I think it was Jeff Hobson who mocked Bush to the Bengals in the first round. Everyone's like, what the hell? This guy's like an early second-round pick at best. And then Bush blew everybody away at the combine, and then it basically became that 2-horse race again, kind of similar to last year when it was like Roquan Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. And I don't remember exactly who the next linebacker was taken, but there was a few between. I think it was there was a few between Bush and then eventually Pratt got taken in the 3rd round. But all in all, Pratt is not that far off as an athlete from either a Bush or a Pratt. He's not as flexible. He's not as explosive as the other two, and I think those testing numbers kind of proved it. But in terms of just second-level speed, which is definitely what the Bengals have been lacking, they get everything in Pratt that they would have gotten in Bush and in Devin White as well, who just had no chance of dropping to the Bengals at 11th overall. In terms of production, all 3 of them were similar in terms of solo tackle market share. Pratt has the experience of a coverage player as a former safety, so he has that angle on it as well. You look at PFF metrics, Pratt was more highly graded as a run defender than a guy like Devin White, who had some problems taking on blocks. And obviously, the SEC, ACC comparison and competition could have been, something with that. But I think Pratt was one of the guys that could have very well been drafted before the 3rd round, but just the lack of starting experience is what kind of dropped him to where he was now. So you look at him, just a very good athlete, a very good tackler in run defense, a guy who has at least some semblance of coverage instincts, a guy who can develop into a 3-down player. I think you can have more confidence in Jermaine Pratt going into year 1 than you could have with a guy like Malik Jefferson, who was a little bit more raw, a little bit more younger than what Pratt is. I think Pratt was like a 5th-year senior who played the Senior Bowl. Jefferson was like a 3rd-year true junior going into the draft. So I think there was a drop-off, but it wasn't as big as maybe big draft media was trying to make it as, and especially with the state of the linebackers, so what they have there, Pratt definitely has a chance to make his name for himself, and it really all just depends on how well he gels with this new defense.
Yeah, and we have to remember too that position is it's a really polarized. It's at a really polarizing time in the NFL, right? I mean, it's right. You either have your absolute studs, or you have kind of serviceable guys that are solid 2-down, maybe 3-down type of guys. I think the Bengals think that Pratt can be a 3-down type of guy because he showed the ability to rush the quarterback in college. He showed a knack to get behind the line of scrimmage. He's a very sound tackler. He's got decent speed, not outstanding, but decent speed, at least in terms of 40-yard dashes in comparison to the other Devins there. But I don't think he's the athlete that those two are. I don't think he is a 3-down type of linebacker, but I think he could be a solid 2-down linebacker. And what he does is he helps areas that have really hurt the Bengals in the past. Tackling in the past couple of years has been awful at that position. That's why they also kept Preston Brown. They signed him to 2 contracts so far because he is known as a sound tackler. But tackling in general for this team has been awful the past 2-3 years at that position. And I think that Pratt brings a sense of stability, so it helps them get off the field, get their defense off the field potentially by, first contact, make the tackle, get the ball carrier down, instead of, a guy breaks 2-3 tackles and a 2-yard play becomes a 7-yard play. So I think in that respect, you gotta like what Pratt brings to the table, and I don't think he's ever going to be a Pro Bowl player. I think if he's healthy. Again, we always say if he's healthy, but I think if he's healthy, he's going to be a pretty decent player for the Bengals for a handful of years, if not many years. He seems to be a really heady guy too, pretty mature. So I think that was one of the things that drew him to Zach Taylor, or vice versa, drew Zach Taylor to him, because there was an emphasis of character and all that stuff. But good question there from Dave. We also got one. I don't know what exactly this question is going to, but it's from Giovanni Lane. What about Stanley Morgan and Auden Tate? I assume that means, and that's in the live YouTube chat, by the way, I assume that means the competition there, because that's probably going to be the battle for the final spot, I would think, or one of, if it does come down to that, because you got the big three. You got Boyd, you got Ross, you got Green. You got to figure they really like Erickson. And then you've got Cody Core, you've got Josh Malone, you've got Auden Tate, and you've got Stanley Morgan. You are high on Stanley Morgan. I will say this before I let you take the floor on this one, John. What's interesting is, and I think we've mentioned this before on another show, but Tate, Malone, and Core are all height, weight, speed guys. Core was really valued for his special teams versatility and ability there. That's something Marvin Lewis really liked. Marvin Lewis is gone, but his special teams coach remains. Right. So there's kind of a lot of moving parts here. It's kind of pick your poison, but I think just for the sake of this question, if you're going Tate versus Morgan for a final spot, what do you do there?
Yeah, like my thing is, why not both? Because I think Cody Core is like the opposite of Westerman. He might be amazing in practice, but as a special teamer, he's not very good. If you actually watch how he is as a gunner, how he's on kickoff teams, I've seen more missed tackles from Cody Core than most other special teamers on the Bengals. So I don't know what the deal is with him. I don't know why Simmons likes him so much. But he is fast and he is tall, but he hasn't developed into a receiver, and he hasn't developed into a solid special teamer. So just don't know what the point of keeping him is. Auden Tate can do exactly what Cody Core does in special teams. He's not as fast, but I think there were some comments about Simmons about saying like not every good special teamer has to be a 4-5 guy. I think Sam Hubbard running like a 4-7. He's highly regarded in that special teams room as a contributor there. Like both Tate and Morgan, I believe, have the capability of becoming much better receivers than Cody Core can ever be. I think Morgan's a better receiver right now than Cody Core has ever been. You got to remember, Morgan was Nebraska's #1 receiver. He was the first 1,000-yard receiver in school history. Cody Core was like the second or third fiddle on the Ole Miss team. And again, he only got drafted because of those athletic dimensions and that speed and that special teams capability that hasn't translated to anything yet. So yes, Darren Sims is still here, but I do think that with Taylor's emphasis on going three wide receivers almost exclusively, depth at that position is going to be important, and having guys who can come in and play potentially significant snaps as a receiver is going to be important. And yes, there wasn't a receiver drafted. Stanley Morgan kind of acts like a draft pick though. And I've never been tremendously high on Auden Tate, but I think his, what he can give, what his output can be as a receiver, specifically in the red zone, and what the talent that Stanley Morgan is. I would like to take both. If I had to choose one, I would probably take Morgan just because I like him more as a complete receiver. But in my opinion, you might as well just keep both and roll with it and potentially lose what could be a good special team in Cody Core. But if he isn't by now, he probably won't be. And it's just no point in just holding on to something that just isn't it.
Yeah, and I want to say this. This may come down also to the combination of health, both current, like present and past issues there. As well as positional flexibility. Maybe Taylor looks at a guy like Auden Tate as a, we joked about this when Auden Tate was starting to get some hype last year, but maybe they tinker with the idea that he is a flex tight end type of player. a simple red zone threat. And with the rehab of Tyler Eifert, the rehab of Mason Schreck, these pass catching tight ends, maybe they have him as kind of that split tight end type of player, like an Eifert. Maybe that's how they use a guy like that. He does not have downfield speed. That's not Alden Tate's game. He has a great catching radius. He has good hands, and he's got immense size. So he's almost a tight end type of size. You don't want to get him doing things that they're not used to, but maybe that's a niche where you can find him, especially if health issues continue to hit the Bengals in the tight end area. Receiver, at the end of the year, the Bengals didn't have – we know the issues with Ross in his first 2 seasons with injuries. They didn't have Green and Boyd at the end of the year last year. They need guys at this position, and they need talented guys. You don't necessarily need it 7 deep, but you got to be able, if Green, who is getting on the downside of his career, ends up getting hurt again, God forbid. If Boyd ends up getting hurt again, God forbid. I mean, you got to have guys that can step up that you can rely on. If Ross doesn't make that year 3 leap that we all think and hope that he can, I don't know. That's something that you need to think about. Let's get out of here on a more positive note, and I guess it's an ego stroke to us here, John. But it's a comment in the live in the comment thread on CincyJungle.com. Last podcast, someone asked if there was a silver lining to the Williams injury. The correct answer was a better draft pick. The correct answer was a better draft pick. Love the show. Been through a lot of iterations with Superling, Menser, and Dairy Queen Scott. You guys are the best. Keep up the good work. Well, that's a very kind statement from Keith there. I will say this. Scott will be back, I think, with the program on a limited basis. He's probably going to help us out with some fantasy football episodes, so we kind of round out our catalog a bit. John and I kind of do this show, and we do our main show as well. And then John may participate as well in the fantasy football show, but I think since that was one of the major areas Scott was bringing to the program, and unfortunately just time constraints doesn't allow him to be a regular co-host, but I have spoken with him, and I think through summer we may start bringing him back for some fantasy football stuff. So Dairy Queen Scott may be coming back, and we're looking forward to that, but we appreciate the compliment and your listenership. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. He's John Sheeran. As I mentioned, I'm Anthony Cosenza. You can get this show on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Spotify, on Google Play. You can get it on Megaphone. You can get it on YouTube and CincyJungle.com. Thanks for all the questions this week. We've got a couple of more that came our way, but unfortunately we're just going a little long here. So I think we're going to cut it off here for some of these questions that we did not happen to get to. We will try and get to those on our mailbag feature that we do on CincyJungle.com. So keep it there. We just want to thank you for your listenership and a lot of dedicated listeners to this program. It's very flattering. And for those who do not know, my esteemed co-host was recently tabbed as one of the best Bengals follows or best Bengal.
Let's not get into that. I'm going to get upset about it. Let's just ignore it. Only 6. William Baker. Only 6. How are there 5 better than me? I don't want to get into it. I swear to God.
Well, I didn't even make it, my friend. You
would be my number 2. I would be 1. You would be 2 easily.
Okay, I appreciate that. You're just saying that because I'm right in front of you, sort of here. So, but it was we were having some fun with it. But it's a good list, and obviously well deserved. You are one of the best Bengals guys out there. And what's cool about this platform and the Cincy Jungle platform is it gives a lot of up and coming people, a lot of people who have been doing it for a while, and a lot of quality people. It gives them a platform to showcase what they do. And what's kind of cool is I feel like Cincy Jungle and Cincy Jungle in particular, the people that we employ, we bring different strengths. that I feel play off of each other pretty nicely. You know, we've got kind of the media side with myself and you. You also do a lot of film review and opinion writing. I do opinion writing. You know, we've got the breaking news guys that are just on top of all of the news and everything. You know, you've got guys like Matt Minich and others Patrick Judas, others that also have different videos and breakdowns and analysis. So I kind of think we bring a lot of different things that, you know, other sites maybe don't provide. And I think it's a good conglomeration. And I was joking around, but it is a well-deserved little nomination to my co-host in terms of a Bengals follow. And if you're not following him for some reason, at John _ Sheeran, do so on Twitter. Also give our Twitter account a follow at Bengals OBI. We're almost at 1,000 followers, which is kind of cool. We've got many more subscribers on our YouTube channel, and I think on our podcast than that. So we appreciate that. But give us a follow if you're on Twitter and you want to check out what's going on with the program. Anything else that I missed this week, John?
Yeah, I think at the moment, U.S. women's team is about to beat France in France, move on to the semifinals. I only care about the Women's World Cup because it's a lot better than the Men's World Cup for the U.S. So go ladies.
Yeah, they are rock stars. Those chicks. They wow, they're very good at what they do. So yeah, very cool. Thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon. Thanks for your questions. Thank you, John, for joining and taking the time out. We will see you next week on our regular show. For John Sheeran, I'm Anthony Cosenza. This has been another episode of the Orange and Black Insider. We'll see you next time.